I'm Sean Davis. Before we get started today, we have a very special guest on the channel. Do me a quick favor, hit that like button and subscribe here to the channel. Greatly appreciate it. But like I said, we have a major special guest here on the show today. We have my guy Alex from the Alex Hoops YouTube channel. You've probably seen a bunch of his great stuff there. Also co-host of the Media Pass podcast with Matt Issa. They do a bunch of great stuff there as well. So go make sure you guys check that out if you haven't already. Alex, my guy, great to chop it up with you for a few minutes before we started, and very happy to have you on. Welcome in.
I'm happy to be here. I'm looking forward to it. A lot of good stuff to talk about, so I'm excited. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. That was very kind words. Appreciate it.
No problem, man. I think there's a lot of controversy, if you will, on social media. That's kind of where I want to start off at. So the NBA revealed their awards finalists last night at the time of this recording, at least 2 days ago at the time this being published, for a few of their awards. And a lot of people are very upset. Now you have some of the media members already posting some of their ballots and stuff like that, which is always a experience,
right,
to say the least. What is your reaction to some of the award finalists? And I mean, I think the one that, at least on my feed, has gotten the most buzz is the Defensive Player of the Year award. That the three finalists, and nothing against any of the three players necessarily, was Rudy Gobert, Bam Adebayo, and Victor Wembanyama. The most improved player award was like Tyrese Maxey, Alperen Sengun, and Kobe White, which is also interesting to me because Tyrese Maxey is definitely going to win that award. Where if you look at the definition of most improved player, Tyrese Maxey just kind of did what he was supposed to do, which kind of sucks, but neither here nor there. But Alex, where's kind of your reaction to some of the awards finalists? Do you agree with how the finalists have shaped up?
Yeah, I real quick, just to touch on the most improved player award, because that's one that I think really, it's one of those where you can really change the criteria of how you view the award. Like, sure, you can ask a million different people and you're going to get a million different answers of like, well, this is what I look for in most improved player, but this is what I look for in most improved player.
Mm-hmm.
And like, it's one of those awards where, to me, like, some people are very against giving it to second year and third year players because theoretically they're like, well, yeah, it's your second, your third season. You're supposed to be improving. You're supposed to be taking leaps throughout your career and throughout your progression as a player. That makes sense. And then some people look for like the Kobe Whites and the Pascal Siakams, where it's like, oh, you've been in the league for a while, and then all of a sudden, you know, you're a star. The Lauri Markkanens, guys who have been around, they've kind of just been doing their thing, playing their role. Maybe have underperformed relative to some of the expectations early on in their career, and then all of a sudden they break out, and it's like, oh, okay, we thought you kind of hit your ceiling. We thought there wasn't much more to you at this point, and then all of a sudden, bam, they're significantly better than people thought they were going to be at that point in their career. So I think Tyrese Maxey's probably going to win it. If it's not Tyrese Maxey, I think Kobe White's probably going to win it.
Mm-hmm.
The one that surprised me to see as a finalist was Sengun. Because this is not a diss on Sengun at all, but
yeah,
in my opinion, I thought he was just about this good last year. Like,
but the Rockets are just better this
right,
year.
It's like he was doing pretty much everything he's doing now last year. It's not like he improved. He improved, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
I think he's taken significant strides, but it's almost like, I don't want to say disrespectful, but it's like he's been doing this. It's not like this is a new development. Like, if you've been paying attention to Sengun, he's been doing this for a while. So that's one award where I'm just like, it's not a crapshoot in the sense that like the player that wins it doesn't deserve it. It's a crapshoot in the sense that I'm just kind of like, everyone views it entirely differently. And ultimately it just comes down to personal opinion. The Defensive Player of the Year finalists were, I understand why people are going to take issue with it. Because the obvious name that's excluded from that list is Anthony Davis. And I was a little surprised to not see him there, especially with the Lakers having just top to bottom more success than the Miami Heat. You would think Anthony Davis would kind of get more recognition for that than he did. But Victor Wembanyama and Rudy Gobert being the other two finalists was like the least surprising thing in the world.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I think one of those two will probably win it. And then, you know, at the end of the day, people don't really look back a ton on who the finalists were. That's usually just who won it. But, you know, I don't do a ton of indexing on like award races just because it's so hard to predict and it's so hard to, you know, try to take a super objective look at it because you have to look at a million different factors and take a million different things into account. But other than that, a lot of it was what I expected. I would say most of the finalists that I saw for the awards, I was like, yeah, that checks out. There were a couple surprises here and there, but for the most part, they all made sense.
Yeah. Going back to the defensive player of the year thing, and again, it's like not even a diss to anybody. Like Bam is awesome, legitimately. Right. He is awesome. Rudy, I feel like some Laker fans don't want Wemby on there. Where I'm like, yeah, no, Wemby is also just insane. And Rudy Gobert, I think, is he a 4-time? I think I saw a tweet the other day. Is Rudy Gobert a 4-time defensive player of the year type of dude? No, but is he still a generational defender that is more than deserving of being in this award race? And yes, the answer is absolutely. So I think he kind of gets too much crap than he deserves as well. And I mean, he legitimately probably changed that game one for them in that Phoenix series, which we'll talk about in just a sec. But so I'm curious. So you bring up for like most improved, for example, everybody has their own different criteria. One name I do think it's a bummer that he wasn't eligible because he was so good. I did call at the beginning of the season. He's one of my guys to watch for this season. Is Jalen Johnson. He was so good this season. Bummer he was injured towards the end of the year for sure.
Yeah, I will definitely be doing an off-season video about Jalen Johnson because, you know, one, he's already just a weird player. Like, kind of looked like the non-shooting playmaking forward that, like, you don't really know what to do with him, but he can do so much that, like, there's definitely a role if you just know how to use him. But now he's kind of developing the mid-range game. He's kind of got that paint scoring bag down a little bit. The perimeter shot, it's, you know, we'll see what happens. I'm not going to be, you know, betting my house on him becoming like some average to above average 3-point shooter, but you never know. I think he can probably be serviceable. And then at that point, it's like, shoot, this guy's got a lot of defensive versatility that you can work with. And then all the fun stuff you can do in the half court with him as a playmaking hub. It's like, yeah, this is a fun player. I don't know how you can't like Jalen Johnson. He's one of the more fun, like, less than 20% usage players you can watch in the league right now.
Yeah. The last award, if you will, that's gone a lot of controversy, which is to the point where I've heard if X player doesn't win, it is a highway robbery. It's the worst thing the NBA has ever done to an award, and that is the MVP race. I'm going to put you on the spot here, Alex. I did a ballot. I posted on Twitter and immediately got slandered because why not? Who is your MVP? Or who, if you did a ballot, and if you didn't, who would be your MVP out of the three finalists?
Gosh, I hate doing this. My personal pick would be Luka.
Okay.
Luka, I think, has really embodied, like, you know, we can do this. We can do the stats thing. We can do the who's the better, this, that, and the third all day. When the award race is splitting hairs as much as this year's is, I kind of end up in that weird in between area of like, there is somewhat of a narrative like spirit to the award where like, you know, Luka had the team on his back and was doing historical stuff all season. That's not saying Jokic isn't deserving of MVP. That's not saying Shai Gilgeous-Alexander isn't deserving of MVP. But I think what Luka was able to do top to bottom throughout the entirety of the season is really what the most valuable player is to me. Where just willing his team to games. Jokic does the same thing. Don't get me wrong. I think Jokic will probably win it, and Jokic deserves it just as much as Luka does. I just think, Luka probably, in my opinion, if I had to choose who I'd give the award to, I'd give it to Luka. We're going to look back on this season and just be like, what on earth? It's one of the most ridiculous seasons I've seen a player have in my entire life. And all the complaints, obviously the defense is what it is. People are always going to cite the defense. Jokic is a good defender, but I'm not sure you can use Jokic's defense as a selling point as to why he should win MVP.
Yeah.
And Shea, I don't have much criticism of Shea either. It's like these three finalists all make sense. It's just like, who do you want ultimately? Like, just take your pick. You're not going to be wrong. And I don't think anyone's going to get robbed if another guy wins. It's just one of those seasons where there's three very deserving players. And
you got the 1 seed, you got the 2 seed in the West, you got the 5 seed who's a 50-win team.
Right.
So, that's why I don't buy the wins argument, which is why I think I almost said Jokic. I think Luka's argument does kind of balance. I think the win, Dallas getting to 50 wins and being the 5 seed really helps Luka's argument, because I feel like that's something you could have very easily said with Jokic and SGA in the MVP race as well. 57 wins, 58 or whatever OKC's at, right? I think actually OKC's at 57, Denver's at
57.
Yeah. But now it's like, well, Dallas has 50 and they're the 5 seed in a loaded Western Conference. So that kind of balances each other out. Luka was also my MVP pick, and I didn't feel good about it.
Right.
Even now talking about it, I'm like, damn, that Jokic guy is really good.
Yeah, I'm terrified to say that Luka's my pick, because I know people are going to be I'm going to have OKC fans coming with pitchforks. I'm going to have Denver fans coming with pitchforks. And it's like, they deserve it too. I'm fine if they win. It's just, and I'm an OKC fan. People are going to kill me for saying that, but it is what it is. It's ultimately a regular season award. And what really matters is which teams are winning which players are getting their teams to the championship at the end of the day.
Yeah. So let's start with some playoff talk. Let's start off with the Oklahoma City Thunder. Admittedly, I didn't watch as much games yesterday live. I went back and kind of watched them today. But the game I did watch a bit more of was the OKC Pelicans game, which was so fun. And I felt like personally, and obviously, it's a long series, if New Orleans was going to steal one in OKC, that felt like the game they were going to have to steal in OKC, just how with the game flowed and things like that. What were your biggest takeaways from game one, personally?
Biggest takeaways, one, this was a shooting variance game for OKC in the worst way possible. A lot of open looks. They did not go in. So your point about if New Orleans was going to steal one, this was the one to steal. The fact that OKC had a bad shooting variance night and still won. I mean, ultimately it came down to a 50-50 possession. It was a coin toss of who was going to win. This isn't to say that OKC shot bad from 3 and they still beat the crap out of New Orleans. It's like, no, they fought tooth and nail the entire time for that win. And ultimately it came down to CJ McCollum basically getting an open 3, and whether or not it went in or, it was a toss up. But OKC did what they needed to do to make sure that New Orleans didn't run away with it when it looked like they might start to run away with it. There were times throughout that game where it was very, very, very touch and go. And New Orleans would go on runs. They were getting, I thought New Orleans was at their best when CJ McCollum was getting to the rim.
Yeah.
And they were putting pressure on Oklahoma City's defense, and flexing them inside to create either open looks for guys like Trey Murphy on the perimeter, or just have a guy like Jonas Valanciunas leverage his size into shots around the rim. And I thought that was pretty effective. And then, with a team like New Orleans, it can be tough sometimes because you'll reach a point where you have to consider how much you really want to be living and dying by tough shot making.
Yeah.
Because the tough shot making can get you very far. when it's going well, man, your team looks unstoppable.
Mm-hmm.
But when there's a lid on the basket and all of a sudden the shots aren't going in, and hats off to Lou Dort, Cason Wallace. Those were the standout defenders from this game.
Cason Wallace is so good.
That dude's going to be perennial all defense for years to come.
I think I had him 8th on my big board last year, and I got so much flack for it. But
I love it.
He's awesome.
I love it. I'm from Kentucky, so UK guy. So I love to see him succeed. I love to see him succeed with the Thunder, especially. And the Drew Holiday comp, I think we're gonna look back on that comp that he got in college and be like, yeah, that was a pretty good comp. But yeah, I thought the ability that OKC had to mitigate the tough shot making that New Orleans was kind of leaning on, kind of made New Orleans have to get uncomfortable. And I think that's one of the reasons it was such a low scoring game is OKC is a very high powered offense. They've been top 5 in offense or top 10 overall in offense this year and top 5 in half court offense all year. This is a very, very good offense. They put up 96, 94 points, something like that.
94.
This was a low scoring game. And I think this series could probably be a dogfight just by virtue of these two teams being really good defensive teams.
Yeah.
What ultimately stood out to me is despite all of this, despite everything I've said about New Orleans, their defense and how good it is, OKC was still getting the shots that they wanted.
Yeah.
The shots just were not falling. And when the shots start falling for OKC, this series could run away quickly.
Yeah. So a few points here. So if you look at just points per 100 possessions from that game one, New Orleans was at 97.9, which is awful. OKC was at 101.1, which is also equally nearly as bad.
Both bad.
Both bad. But to your point about the bad shooting variance game for OKC last night shot 32%, 8 for 25 on catch and shoot looks, and they shot a ridiculous 46% at the rim in game one. Where if you look at the regular season, which is obviously a much larger sample size, you're talking about a 63% team at the rim, and you're talking about a 40.1% team on catch and shoot looks. 43.1% on unguarded catch and shoot looks, which their offense was able to generate more times than not. I love Mark Daigneault. Only reason why I didn't put him in my top 5, I did in my coaches tiers mid-season, because I just wanted to get the playoff run in and see it. But I was like, man, I'm ready to put Mark Daigneault in my top 5. Just give me a couple of playoff series wins, and I'm there. But yeah, I do agree. I think it's going to be a really fun series. It's going to be a defensive series for sure. Because, New Orleans just have so many good wing defenders. Herb Jones is, if I am a prospect coming out that even doesn't have the best shot, I am watching Herb Jones. That is, I think, the prototypical now 3-and-D wing that is going. Yep. Jaden McDaniels too. But I think Herb Jones is just a better 3-point shooter at this point, where I'm going to do my job, hit threes, maybe get some layups, stuff like that. But I'm going to hit threes. I'm going to guard the best player. And I think he did a really good job at times, even down the stretch where, like you said, it felt like New Orleans was going to wind up winning that game, guarding SGA. And then Shea hits the ridiculous shot to put him up. And again, that's where you get potential MVP coming to the occasion there. But from New Orleans' perspective, right, is there anything else that they can do? Do you think they can maybe even attack? Do they try to get Chet into more foul trouble? Because I think that is the weakness with OKC, right? Is I do think the bigger match. That's why I thought, and Laker fans in general thought LA matched up better with OKC because of the size. And maybe that's really where New Orleans misses a Zion, for example. All indicators are Zion's probably going to miss the series. But what do you do heading in games for the rest of the series if you are New Orleans and Willie Green?
Yeah, I definitely think there's a lot of credence to New Orleans needs to leverage that size more. Like I said earlier, they looked at their best when they were getting inside and attacking in the paint and kind of using Jonas Valanciunas to try and punish Chet. I say punish Chet like Chet's not a fantastic defender, but
great defender.
against size, there is ultimately only so much you can do. And the refs obviously play a role in kind of what is and isn't a foul. And, there's only so much you can control. That's one of OKC's mottos is you can only control what you can control. And they do that very well. But Jonas Valanciunas, what's interesting, if you look at the minutes for the guys that played, and this isn't necessarily unusual for big guys, but Jonas only played 29 minutes relative to a Trey Murphy who played 44. Brandon Ingram played 37. CJ McCollum played 39. Herb Jones played 33. And that's not to say it's, a bad thing that Jonas Valanciunas only played 29 minutes, but
yeah,
I do think they probably need him to be on the floor more just due to having that size available. OKC is such a heavy driving team. OKC is going to try and make use of any little bit of space that you can get or that you give them. And I think they can live with having Jonas. One thing I noticed is Jonas was getting pulled out to the perimeter more than he probably needed to be. That was one thing tactically that I saw New Orleans doing where I was like, does he need to be out this far?
right.
You could probably live with him being a bit more Brook Lopez and hanging back and drop a little bit further. And also the other thing about the minutes that I just noticed, Jonas only had 2 fouls. So 29 minutes, 2 fouls. It's like, I think in this series, we'll probably see Jonas playing more minutes because the alternative would be a Larry Nance. I think Larry Nance did a lot very, very well. But obviously Larry Nance, one factor with him is his health.
Right.
I think you're kind of getting similar playmaking stuff between both of them, just in terms of like being a DHO hub and kind of greasing the wheels of the offense. I think Larry Nance is probably a little bit quicker as a decision maker. But ultimately, I think Jonas's size is going to be what they're going to need to lean on. Another thing I'm going to be watching is Dyson Daniels only played 2 minutes 56 seconds.
Yeah.
I would not be surprised if we see more Dyson Daniels in this series.
Yeah, this is going to be a great series to watch. I didn't realize they didn't play until Wednesday, so I might do a film breakdown on game 1 because this is going to be a fun series, right? I'm curious with New Orleans. A lot of their offense is ball screen oriented, right? They have 43 scoring possessions including pass outs out of like their ball screen stuff. 23 of them went to CJ or including pass outs and stuff. 15 went to BI. So that's going to be a big key as well for OKC. Like, okay, how do we want to guard, CJ McCollum and Brandon Ingram ball screens, especially with Zion out? Like, that's definitely going to be a big part of New Orleans offense. Yeah, it's going to be a fun series going forward, rather. Heading forward, that's a So let's shift gears to another series, if you will, and let's go to Orlando, where heading in that series, I feel like an idiot. It's very early. I picked Orlando to pull it off. My argument was the defense, I thought was just too good. Jalen Suggs still had like a 3-minute stretch in that game a couple of times where I think he got like the on-ball steal at half court, like fully locking up Darius Garland, gets an hand one dunk, comes down, and Orlando gets another stop, and he comes down and hits a 3 to like cuts the lead down to 6 or whatever at that point. But it felt like during that game, 1, Donovan Mitchell was just too much. And 2, which I guess has always been the biggest problem with this Orlando team and why, I had them somehow pulling off that series. And again, it's early. Game 2 has just started at the time of this recording. I had them getting swept by Boston because they just can't score. And that is the biggest thing that stuck out to me, Alex, with Orlando's offense was, how do these dudes score like at all in a playoff setting? Do you have any takeaways from that Orlando and Cleveland series? And am I just a complete idiot for trying to trust Orlando?
No, I mean, that is a mystery. I think really what it comes down to is there's a lot of guys. Orlando's a very flawed team, just in terms of roster construction. I love Orlando. I like what they're building. I think they're going to be a great team. I think Paolo is going to be great. I love what Jalen Suggs has become. But they're a flawed team. all teams are flawed teams. Some flaws are more glaring and exploitable than others. But Orlando has some more obvious flaws of all the teams that are in the playoffs right now. I think the issue that we're really going to see in this series is that there's too many guys that Orlando is going to have on the floor at any given time that you can sell out on and just be like, yeah, we're going to leave Jonathan Isaac open in the corner.
Yeah,
If Jonathan Isaac
this year, Franz Wagner, we're leave him open. Franz Wagner open.
Oh yeah, we'll live with Jonathan Isaac and Franz shooting 8 threes a night if that's what it takes. If they shoot well, oh well. We'll play the variance game. We'll play the math on it and keep Paolo from scoring. And as much as I love Paolo, the efficiency is something to watch with him. He is yet to be a hyper efficient scorer. The efficiency is drastically improved, but he still has some selection issues to work out. I do think he can maybe get a little too mid-range jump shot hungry at times. Not to be too like anti mid-range, because I'm not anti mid-range at all. If you can hit it at a high rate, then take it.
Cancel Alex. He hates the mid-range.
Right. Yeah. But there's so many implications for a defense when you can get them to start questioning if they should leave you open in the mid-range. And I think Paolo is not quite to the point yet where teams are questioning if they need to be more diligent on him in the mid-range with things like throwing a ton of bodies at him and digging at him when he's kind of getting past that first line of defense. And all of this hasn't even mentioned the fact yet that Cleveland's a fantastic defensive team.
In their own right.
Right.
That kind of neutralizes my dumb argument.
It's like, this is already a questionable at best offensive team. Now you're throwing them against one of the best defenses in the NBA. It's like that just sucks. And Cleveland, I'm not calling Cleveland some elite offense.
Yeah.
And Orlando's a fantastic, spectacular defense. But I do think Cleveland has more top-end talent where it just kind of pushes them over the top. The thing I'm really going to be watching is Darius Garland. How much does Darius Garland become a factor in this series of like, oh, crap. All of a sudden, Darius Garland starts doing some of the Steve Nash stuff that we've seen him do where he's coming off screens and just pulling jumpers and shooting 37.5% from three on 10 attempts a game over the course of the series. Yeah. If that happens, this series is going to be a problem very fast. But ultimately, by nature of just two defensive teams, I think Orlando has a shot. You can kind of work the defense enough to maybe get your foot in the door, but the Donovan Mitchell of it all, the Darius Garland of it all, plus the fact that Cleveland is just such a good defensive team as it is, Orlando has a very uphill battle is pretty much all I'll say.
Oh no. Which apparently, as we are recording this, Jalen Suggs just got carried off the floor.
Can't
put any weight on his left leg.
That's
grabbing
awful.
His left knee, apparently. Now, what they're also saying, which I guess maybe some benefit, is they're saying he made contact with Donovan Mitchell, which is what caused it. Which I'm saying that's benefit because normally you don't want a non-contact injury.
Right. Yeah.
But still, like that's
not good.
Awful. Regardless, that is awful. So, I think with Orlando, the only shot they realistically have now, I wish that this Sean talking would have told Sean 4 days ago when he made his predictions video of this. Paulo has to just be somehow that efficient player that we're saying that he eventually needs to get to. And maybe it's going to take this series, right? Where like, okay, you take your trip or whatever overseas, you do whatever to like debrief, not think about basketball. You get back, you start doing your offseason workouts. You're like, okay, how do we make sure this does happen again? Well, Paulo, you do X, Y, Z, and it just comes down to efficiency. Like you said, he is one of the more high volume pull-up mid-range jump shooters in the league by a lot. He's 13th in the league in attempts per game out of players that have taken at least like 110 pull-up jumpers in general, right? On mid-range attempts, the only players that are above Paolo Banchero, SGA, Devin Booker, DeMar DeRozan, Brandon Ingram, KD, Brunson, DeJounte Murray, Kyrie, De'Aaron Fox, Cam Thomas, Cade, Kawhi, and Joel Embiid. Those are the only players in the league. Sounds like a lot because I just roll through them really fast, but that's 13 players. Those are the only players in the entire league that have taken the volume of shots, which is 126 players. So it's still a pretty big sample. Only players have taken more pull-up twos per game than Apollo, and only one player shooting a worse percentage than him out of that list, right? And that is De'Aaron Fox. So you're talking like the players above him are so many more ridiculous, high volume mid-range jump shooters in the league, but they're also guys that can like do like Devin Booker is just an elite offensive player in general. Same with SGA. SGA is probably one of the best. This kind of turned into an OKC Thunder podcast at this point, but one of the best drivers I have seen in the past decade or so, like just his craftiness and the pace he plays with. And the 3 games obviously developed nicely. KD, just the jumper in general. Brunson's crafty where he can get to the rim, not a high paint touch guy, but can get there and get used to his craftiness. Kyrie, De'Aaron's so shifty, he can get to the rim. Like Paulo, I'm not saying he can't get to the rim, but I feel like you saw it in game 1 where Cleveland did a good job at making the paint. And like so, you have so many dudes out there that you have to play that Cleveland can say, all right, we are going to help off the strong side corner, which is the NBA like just death sentence normally, right? How they view defense. And no, it's Jonathan Isaac right there. We don't care. We are going to be hell-bent on Paulo. You're going to have Isaac Okoro on you or whatever, and we're going to be hell-bent on you shooting all these jumpers, which analytically speaking is still not a super efficient shot. And Paulo's just not an efficient player in general. So I think that is definitely a big thing that they'll need. And obviously, we don't know what the status is like Jalen Suggs, and that can definitely make the series even more of an uphill climb for Orlando. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, I haven't tweeted this out. I'm going to love them in 2 years. I love them now, but they're going to be even more of a problem in like 2 years where we're talking like Paulo's first extension. I think that's where they're really going to start rolling because, yeah, like you said, if you look at like Paulo's synergy stuff, there's nothing he's like efficient at whatsoever.
Yeah, and I think this is an issue of the expectations that were put on him were probably a little bit premature.
Sure.
It's his second year. He's I think anyone who expects him to be like, I'm not criticizing him for being inefficient. I understand why he's inefficient. He is a young player who is on a poorly optimized roster. Offensively.
Yeah.
And his strengths just aren't able to be maximized right now. So his development's kind of hindered a little bit further. I think he'll ultimately be a better player because of it. I think next year, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, we're going to see the fruits of the labor that he's going through now. It's just, you got to go through these growing pains, especially when you're on the early stages of coming out of a rebuild. And like Paolo, I think is a very great playmaking kind of point forward.
I was just going to say, like, he has so much fun stuff about him, which like you said, doesn't always get optimized at the best of his ability. But yeah, I mean, he is legitimately still a fun player, but you're like a year away from fully getting to see that because of the stuff we talked about.
And you don't get the benefits of all the playmaking that he can do with a poorly optimized roster, especially in a playoff setting where coaches are looking at like every little thing that they can exploit and see how much of an impact it has on the opposing team's ability to score. It's like they're going to find your most minute weakness and they're going to hammer it into oblivion. And for as good of a playmaker as Paolo is, that's not going to be able to be leveraged to its fullest potential until that roster's optimized around him.
Yeah. Let's get to a couple more games here. Let's get into Knicks Sixers. Another series.
This one's fun.
I'm really, really excited for. So I was planning on doing some film breakdowns for a few of these playoff series. This was one of them. Was able to get around to it. But this legitimately is one of my favorite series. It's actually, They're about to play now. So as soon as we're done with this, I'm going to go watch that game too, because this series is going to be fun. First, let's just start here. What was your prediction going in? I think this is a fun way to start off this Knicks conversation.
So I have been higher on the Knicks than most throughout the entire season.
Right.
This last 3 months of the season, I felt more vindicated about that conviction that I've had.
Sure.
I still would probably, the Embiid of it all is the wild card, where I'm like, Embiid truly being Embiid and doing the Embiid things that we know he can do. That is ultimately kind of a hill that you can't climb at a certain point. And that's kind of what I came into the series thinking until I saw Mitchell Robinson get matched up against Joel Embiid. And then I was like, all of a sudden, oh, the Knicks kind of have an answer for Joel Embiid. And his name is Mitchell Robinson. And Embiid is one of those players where it doesn't matter who you stick on him. Embiid's going to get his. He's going to score the ball. He's going to draw fouls. He's going to be able to find his teammates when you start sending those double teams. But Mitchell Robinson did some of the best job defending Joel Embiid that I've seen a player do in the past 2 or 3 years, probably. I thought he did a really good job of just not fouling, not getting baited into fouling, contesting well and disrupting Embiid's flow. We saw that if you want to slow down Joel Embiid, you have to play him really physical, but still be disciplined, which like is almost a oxymoron. It's like, how are you able to be physical with Joel Embiid, but still be disciplined enough to not get called for a ton of fouls? And it's like, well, go watch some Mitchell Robinson tape from game one and you'll understand what that looks like. So I'm really interested to see how that unfolds over the course of an entire series. How much does the whistle change throughout this series with that matchup in particular? Does Josh Hart keep shooting 8 threes a game? Because that's the big story for me here is if you look in the first half of this game, Josh Hart was taking his threes, but he wasn't making them. And then you look in the fourth quarter and all of a sudden he's hit 3 straight threes and he basically sealed the game. Not to mention the fact that he grabbed 13 rebounds in the game. So
he's insane.
That's like that kind of stuff right there swings the series. Jalen Brunson didn't have a great game. I don't expect that to sustain over the course of 4 to 7 game series. This is where I look at the two teams and I try to find potential swing factors for each team. Like, okay, if X happens, then can this team win? And there's a lot more swing factors that I can see for the Knicks realistically unfolding over the course of a series than I can see realistically unfolding for the Sixers. And that's probably why I'm leaning the Knicks more in this series. And that doesn't even kind of scratch the fact that the injury thing with Joel Embiid, I'm very concerned about. They talked about it during the broadcast that he had a surgery and they said it was his first surgery and it really messed him up. And it's like a very big mental thing. And he's really struggling trying to like be comfortable, like jumping and coming down and understanding that the pain that he feels when he comes down on that surgically repaired leg, like, yes, it's okay to feel that pain. You're not in danger of like injuring it again necessarily. Other injuries could still happen, which is an entirely different concern. But does Joel Embiid get comfortable enough to where, yeah, you got the mid-range shooting, you've got the ability to break down guys off the dribble, you've got the ability to pop out to the three-point line and knock down threes. But what really is going to make Joel Embiid unstoppable is when he's able to leverage the athleticism as well and just overwhelm you and impose himself physically, which that's where the mental hurdles coming off of surgery definitely concern me a little bit.
Yeah. Shout out Deuce McBride, Cincinnati legend, 21 points off the bench in game 1 too. So my pick going in was ultimately New York in 7. Now again, the Embiid stuff could very easily change the prediction of why that out of the first round matchups, this was probably one of the more difficult matchups for me to predict, was because of the Embiid. How impactful can Embiid be given the injury? You talked about the mental hurdles that he's dealing with because of the coming back almost immediately from the surgery. And you could definitely tell there were just at points throughout the game where it just bothered him. And some of the stuff that you were like, man, Embiid would have done this, or maybe Embiid would have contested this more at the rim. He just doesn't feel completely comfortable with right now.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think, and like you said, I think New York, in terms of outcomes and ways they can get to a series win, I do think ultimately New York does probably just have more ways they can find a way to win 3 more games at this point than Philly does. But if Embiid, this is where the conversation came back. If Embiid does start to, or even just continues to play well enough, right? Where 29 points, 8 boards in game 1. Tyrese Maxey, even though I guess I kind of like threw him under the bus at the beginning of the show, saying he should have won most improved player, he's incredible. 33 points in game 1, where like his craftiness around the rim is so unique and so special. You combine that with just the shot making and just how quickly he can just go on a heater and make it almost a nightmare to guard him. Mm-hmm. My only thing with Philly is I just don't trust anybody else on that team consistently.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm actually excited about where Philly goes from here. Because that obviously after this season, it's just Maxey and Embiid, if I remember correctly, under contract.
Yeah, they got a pretty clean cap sheet.
They have a really clean cap sheet to where they could say, all right, Embiid, Maxey, how do you want to build this team around? And I mean, Tobias Harris is just not it. I'm gonna try to find the Jimmy Butler meme or whatever at the end of game. I don't even remember what game it was that Philly series a couple years ago. But I think they are the more reliable guys that can not even put the ball in the basket, which would help, but that can serve a real role in a playoff series against New York. And Tibbs is going to eventually like just say, oh, you know what? These other guys, we don't care. We're going to make life hell for Tyrese Maxey and for Joel Embiid. And like I said, Mitchell Robinson did a great job on him in game 1. And that's why I'm curious to see how this game 2 unfolds. And New York, I don't want to say there's pressure on them to get game 2 because I think this goes back to Philly 1-1. This is what I think going to go the distance at that point where you're talking about a 7-game series. And it could still go the distance if they lose. I mean, if they win game 2, but I am really, really excited about that series. I do think Philly has the best player in the series personally. If they're both healthy, Brunson's been awesome. But I think like if Maxey keeps playing like this, Brunson's not going to have that game 1 like I mentioned. But yeah, this is definitely going to be one of the more fun series with 2 technically defensive-minded coaches as well. Nick Nurse obviously can devise a hell of a defensive game plan whenever he wants.
I'm interested to see what he does because he did not show his full hand in game 1, which I understand.
Yeah. Like I have to go back and watch the film. I don't like. There's at some point they're going to throw a boxing one.
No doubt.
That's the Nick Nurse special. Where's the boxing one your best player? But no, seriously, like I think Brunson, and maybe I'm talking myself into saying, maybe Brunson does have another bad game in air quotes, more scheme related though, where I think game 1 it's like, okay, we missed more shots than maybe just a shooting variance game, right? And Philly got going in the third quarter to where it was a point like, oh shit, Philly might wind up winning this game.
Right.
But yeah, the game 2 and obviously the rest of the series is going to be fun. I mean, as I'm saying this, Tyrese Maxey very early on has 9 points in 4 minutes in game.
It's pretty good.
Pretty good. DiVincenzo's doing DiVincenzo things. Brunson's 0 for 4 with 1 point so far.
Hey, maybe he does have another stinker. We'll see.
Fun. We'll see. Any other specific matchup that you want to talk about from the game 1s or like reactions in general from the first weekend of the NBA playoffs?
I want to hear your thoughts about the Nuggets Lakers series. I really want to know what you're feeling because I do think it was a very interesting game.
Yeah.
Like top to bottom, I thought there was a lot of good stuff from both teams. Like the Lakers had a lot of moments offensively where I was like, oh, that's a really effective set that they just ran. And I would be surprised if they don't, go back to it. And then all of a sudden they don't go back to it, which kind of confused me.
No, that basically is the Laker experience, but must be nice having Mark Dagnall.
Right. Yeah, just run the same thing into the ground and force the other team to adjust and then try something different after that.
Yeah.
But yeah, how are you feeling about this?
So I almost got canceled from Laker
Oh,
fandom. It's like, bro, I gave my objective opinion. Like, I'm a Laker fan, but I'm more viewed as an analyst for sure. Like, I'm going to give you my objective opinion because what the hell are you following me for? If we're being completely honest here,
Right.
I picked Denver in 6, and it goes back to the same conversation we had about New York and Philly, where I just thought there were too many outcomes that Denver could find a way to win than it was like the Lakers. I thought there were very few outcomes where the Lakers could find a way to win. And game 1 honestly looked like the exact game script, pretty much copy and paste from the other 8 matchups or whatever, where the Lakers had lost 8 in a row. Jokic is freaking amazing, obviously. I personally hate the idea, and I keep getting this in my mentions. Oh man, let's just force Jokic to play you one-on-one and just let him get dog. Jokic is one of the greatest one-on-one post scorers of all time. And then also like the idea of letting Jokic play one-on-one and kind of just cuts the water off for the other guys. That's way easier said than done. And that's just not how basketball works. Like, Denver can still run all their action, their off-screen stuff for MPJ. They can just go Jamal Murray ball screen and get him. Like, so again, the idea of that sounds way better than it functionally actually is. The Lakers need D'Lo bad, and it sucks because my working theory, I'm actually curious what your thoughts on this is. My working theory with D'Lo, it's kind of why I think KD hasn't played well in the past 2 playoff runs, going back to last year against Denver more specifically. We had some not even bad games, just like some really inefficient games. And same with the Boston series, his last year in Brooklyn, is in the playoffs. From a coaching perspective, it's more like, okay, how many ways can we like find a way to win, essentially? From a player perspective, it's can I find a way to create easy shots for myself, right? It's either can I just be an elite paint touch guy, Zion, etc., right? Can I be an insane shot maker, Luka, etc.? Can I create separation, Jamal Murray, etc.? Like there's plays where I'm like, the Lakers really guard Jamal Murray well. They're physical with him, etc. Jamal's a quick twitch athlete where he can like get to a spot really quickly. He's not the most strong guy. He's not weak or whatever, obviously, but like he's not the most athletic dude, but he has like that quick twitch where he can go bang, bang and has this much separation between you and him and how he gets open look. And so my theory with D'Lo is like D'Lo's biggest weakness, in my opinion, is his separation ability. Like he just can't consistently, when being guarded by really good players, KCP, Christian Brown's a great defender, Payne Watson, etc. He can't consistently create space for himself. So it's contested jumper. He's not a big paint touch guy. He's a good finisher, but he can't get there. So, and that's why I think personally, like you get in these playoff scenarios where you're facing teams like Denver last year, Denver this year, the playoff runs to Minnesota and Brooklyn, where you get to the playoffs. And like you said, the coaches are honing on every single weakness of yours. That shows up way more in the playoffs, from my opinion. I'm curious what you think, but yeah, Denver in 6, because I think Jokic is the best player in the world. And I just thought they had too many outcomes where they could find a way to win.
Yeah, I have Denver in this series. Any amount of games, really. 4, 5, 6, maybe 7, probably not. But
if it got to 7, I would just pick the Lakers at that point.
Yeah. There would be some home cooking going on or something. Something would probably be fishy about that.
Yeah.
So I have in my notes from this game, there's the play that has become associated with the Nuggets this season. It's Jamal Murray and Jokic running a pick and roll. You've got Aaron Gordon in the dunker spot, KCP and MPJ spacing the floor in the corners.
Yeah.
So I have in my notes here, Reeves gets behind the ball and it puts Rui in a 2-on-1 with Jokic as the roll man, Jamal as the ball handler. Rui kind of has his hips angled more towards Jamal. Jamal makes the short roll pass. Rui's not able to rotate his hips that much. That's a really tough hip rotate. You talk about the best defenders in the world. It's guys that can rotate their hips just super, super, super fast and flip around and recover immediately in those specific scenarios. So that forces LeBron to step up. LeBron steps up. And that's when you get the Aaron Gordon lob. And it's just money
for that offense.
It's a cheat code.
Yeah, it's a cheat code.
The issue that not necessarily the issue, the reason it's really hard for me to pick LA in this series or really see a big avenue for the Lakers to get their foot in the door is the solution to defending that is a heavily, heavily rehearsed defensive scheme. Like, you would have to have one of two things happen. You would either have to have Rui pre-switch to the corner.
We're talking about some extravagant shit now.
Yeah, it's it's so hard to be able to
on the fly.
Right. You have to rehearse that 1,000 times, rehearse defending that 1,000 times, rehearse every permutation of that play 1,000 times to be able to defend it. And I just don't really see that being realistic for the Lakers right now.
What's your second avenue? Before I ask you another question, what's your second avenue?
The other avenue would be, let's see, either have Rui pre-switch onto the corner, which it was KCP in this specific scenario. And alternatively, it was let Rui rotate to Aaron Gordon and just have D'Lo stay in the corner. Yeah, appeal switch. Okay. Which I don't know, just based on seeing how the Lakers have defended it so far, I just don't know if that's going to happen. That seems like something that theoretically you could say, like, okay, hey, in this circumstance, we're going to have you peel switch onto either Aaron Gordon or whoever's in the strong, or I guess in this situation, because it was on Jokic in the short roll, is the weak corner, but have that peel switch occur. I don't know if that I see that playing out enough over the course of an entire series. Plus, that's one play, and the Nuggets have like 5,000 plays.
Exactly.
So really, that's what it comes down to. Is we're talking about one play, and it's a pick and roll.
Yeah, we're not even talking about the most unstoppable 3-man action in basketball, which is they do it out of horns where it's or it's more like elbow action where like Jamal throws into Jokic, you get the guts. No, Jamal runs through, and it's just like gut action in the middle of the floor, which is already so freaking hard to guard. Boston ran it with Jaylen Brown's one of their favorite sets for Jaylen Brown a few years ago. It was just money. Because it's so hard to guard a middle of the floor pin down, which is all like gut action is for anybody watching. Because if you switch it, you are losing all leverage, and you have more times than not a bigger player. In this case, it's MPJ, or sometimes they'll run it inverted and have MPJ coming off. Right. And it's MPJ dead set in front of the rim, and you can't top block it either. Because again, you just lose one of the most unstoppable actions in basketball. So I'm curious, right? If you don't mind, in that play that you brought up, so is the ball screen on the right side? I'm assuming, right?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, ball screen on the right side. So that means Aaron Gordon's left dunker spot on the left side of the floor, logically.
Right, yeah.
Right. MPJ strong side corner? So on the right side of the floor?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so how would you want to pre-switch that then? Curious. So like this is a fun preview, I guess, for like the basketball sicko show that I'm first episode this week. Go over like some popular basketball concepts or whatever. This is fun. Like I love doing this stuff. So I brought up my whiteboard. So like we're pre-switching this, right? So you're basically saying when the ball screen occurs, I'm gonna Sean and post add like a video diagram of this. You're saying when the ball screen occurs, right? You essentially want Rui, who is guarding Jokic, to instead of coming out and defending. LA ran Rui in a drop. One of my biggest adjustments for game one, I talked about this, I feel like on 8 billion podcasts, was they got to figure out how they want to guard Jokic and ball screens when Rui's guarding him. Like in the first quarter, Denver just feasted off of it for Jokic specifically. Like I need to get to the other court in terms of trying to stop tracking it, but like plays like that happen all the time. So when we talk about pre-switching, we want Cleveland does also a really good job. Cleveland's really fun with how they switch off ball at times. But when we talk about pre-switching, I'm assuming you want Rui was guarding the ball. He was guarding Jokic. Like I said, Lakers had him in a drop. You want him to immediately dive down to Aaron Gordon and have Aaron Gordon's man, who I guess in this scenario, based off how the Lakers are playing it, I don't know who was on the floor at the given time, but we're going starters with starters. It's AD guarding Aaron Gordon, and AD just steps up and replaces his spot. And AD's in the drop, which you feel way more comfortable about than Rui Hachimura, for example.
Right. So that's one of the issues with I just pulled it up in the game because I had it timestamped. It was real easy for me to pull up real quick. So the issue is it's at 5:51 in the third quarter.
So when Denver's hitting everything at this point.
Right. Yeah, they've been on a run for 5 straight minutes at this point.
Right.
Actually, going back to the second quarter, they were going.
He says 5:50.
5:51 is when Jamal's bringing the ball up the floor. LeBron's in the restricted area on Aaron Gordon. One of the problems with the whole, we all talk about the Rui on Jokic thing, which was like the big adjustment from last year where everyone's like, oh, this might be the thing that, lets the Lakers beat the Nuggets, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This is one of the disadvantages is you don't have Anthony Davis in drop. Right. You have Rui in drop. So realistically, what happens in the play, there it is. Perfect. So
it is slowing this down so I don't get copyrighted.
Right.
So okay.
Watch what happens to Rui.
Yeah.
So he's staying with Murray, and then he's got to turn and get onto Jokic. But by the time Jokic gets the ball, if you just go a little bit further, by the time Jokic gets the ball, it's over. The play's done because that lob's there.
Yeah.
LeBron's going to step up no matter what because he knows
that's his job.
He has to. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you either have to have you have AD dig off the strong corner. No, you're not going to do that.
That's MPJ.
Right. Have Rui just leave that and go to Aaron Gordon, have D'Lo stay home in the corner, and you may not stop it 100% of the time, but at least you shut down a wide open lob. You have a much better shot if Rui just forgoes trying to stay with Jokic, even though he's behind the ball by the time Jokic actually gets it. Just go straight to Aaron Gordon and be ready for that lob. Be ready to get up there and block it. And then if you keep D'Lo home in the corner, you have most of your bases covered.
So this is where the problem aligns. I like the idea. I like the idea a lot, and I'm glad we're going through this process. You know how much we have to go through to say, all right, so we're gonna do all this, and so okay, first thing, because I still think there's some problems LA might run. So for starters, I think you would have to pre-switch now. There is no indication that Denver, they're going to, obviously, but I think you have to pre-switch this so early for it to work. And just because of how high the ball screen is, that's a lot of distance between Braun and Rui. Braun to make up, to the point where in order for it to work, you would almost have to pre-switch now, for one, and for two, just to give Rui time to get back, you would need D'Lo to bump, to crack down on Aaron Gordon, just to bump, and trust D'Lo's ability, which I already don't. But
you would have to trust him to recover out to the 3-point line.
Exactly. You have to trust him to recover out to the 3-point line because at this point, you're almost screwed. You're almost screwed now because you already let Jokic set the screen. Rui's already in the drop. Again, unless Rui, no, you can't do that because I was good. Rui drop down, Braun come up, but again, that's just an open lane for Braun. For Jamal Murray. But yeah, and again, like I said, it just comes down to who has more avenues of winning. And by the grace of God, right, the Lakers are able to stop the Jamal Murray Jokic 2-man game, which ultimately, I just think at some point your best bet might just be Braun guard Jamal, AD guard Jokic, and to hell with it. We'll just switch it if we have to. But that's only feasible in clutch time moments, in my opinion. Like, I'm not doing that for 48 minutes.
No.
Bron's going to get tired or in foul trouble. AD's going to get tired or in foul trouble.
That's one thing I had in my notes is they need to try and keep LeBron from getting put in off-ball action as much as possible because he is going to get tired fast.
Yeah. And one of the things I did come up with adjustment-wise, but again, like, and that's what makes Denver so freaking tough. And where I said Denver in 6 and, oh man, Sean's a fake fan. No, it's just so hard to stop Denver's offense. Because what I said, you hedge it, you put 2 on the ball, especially with Rui, which in theory, Rui's a quicker defender than, I mean, outside of AD's probably, Bron too, right? We're going to keep LeBron out of it for now. He's a quicker defender. He should be able to move laterally, stuff like that. Some of the data does support putting 2 on the ball with Jamal than like switching or playing drop here, obviously. But then again, the problem is, obviously, it's a glaring one. If you hedge, right? We're talking about forcing Jamal Murray. Where's my cursor? Saying Jamal Murray towards the sideline.
Mm-hmm.
It just opens up a 4-on-3 game for Denver, which you're already going to be in the first place because of this. But now it just exposes the Lakers on the back end, right? But now, again, a counter argument to that even was, well, if you have your matchups appropriately, AD should be able to protect the rim if he's not guarding Jokic in the hedge. But if AD's at the rim now, it's now 4-on-2 because now we're just going to space the floor and you have one less dude to rotate because we're trying to keep him at the rim. So, yeah. Sorry, I'm not going to apologize for making this a mini film breakdown. That was fun as hell.
No, I love it. This is what I'm here for. I love this stuff. This is the best.
Yeah, but I hope they win tonight. I did have a bunch of adjustments I thought LA could make. I'm not confident that they will make them, and even if they do, I just think Denver's better, and that's okay for me to admit that Denver's better.
Yeah, people forget. Like, we get so hung up on like being anti-narrative and like being anti-reductive analysis and stuff like that, but really, like, sometimes, a lot of times in basketball, it just comes down to one team is just better than the other, and that's okay.
That's okay.
There's nothing to be ashamed of. It's how it is sometimes. It's okay.
I always compare. So I'm a Chargers fan, right? So I always compare it to, in this Denver matchup in particular, facing the Chiefs. Like, it's just demoralizing as hell, right? But like, the level of how perfect you got to play, like, you have to play so perfect to even have a shot at beating them that you still might lose. And there's been times with the Chargers or with the Lakers, with Denver in the past 9 games or whatever it is now, where maybe they didn't play perfect, but they played so close to perfect. We're like, you know what? They deserve to win that game. It just doesn't matter because they were just better at the moment, right? And that's why I thought the narrative of, I thought it was disrespectful to you guys too that the Lakers should have tanked. The first thought, it's just disrespectful to basketball in general, right? To purposely lose a game. 1, 2, Thunder are the 1 seed for a reason, so there's no guarantee you even beat them. And 3, it was, you have to face Denver at some point. Like, in order, even for you guys, like, in order to get out of the West, they're the defending champs, you have to go there. Still very much good. You have to go through Denver. So ducking them does nothing for you except potentially put your ass on the couch and not in the actual playoffs. But yeah, they're insanely good, and a potential OKC Denver series would be really, really fun and stressful for you, I'm sure, but really, really fun as an objective.
My blood pressure would be through the roof.
Oh man. Well, Alex, I am not going to keep you for much longer. I already took too much of your time. Really, really appreciate you hopping on. That was really fun. Where can people find you at and find your great pods and your great work that you do?
Yeah, at @AlexHoops_ on Twitter, Alex Hoops on YouTube, the Media Pass on all major podcast platforms, and YouTube as well. Go check those out if you want. If you like more stuff like what I've been saying here and more. But yeah, thanks for having me on, man. This was a blast. I had a great time. Love talking hoops, and hopefully we can do it again sometime. Maybe we'll have you on the Media Pass. We can talk some Lakers.
Hell yeah. Thanks. Tell Matt, say what's up. Matt's awesome. Go follow Matt too.
Absolutely.
And I'll put all their stuff in the description down below. But Alex, thanks so much for hopping on, everybody. Till next time, everybody. See ya. Stay safe and peace out.